Hey folks, welcome back to Gaming Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news in the industry, and of course stream for fun. Today we're going over Gaming News Consolidated. This is October 27th through November 2nd. So we're going to be talking a lot about Black Ops 6. We're going to talk about some pay-to-win audio, which is kind of insane. I'm also going to be talking about what is skill-based damage. We're going to go over the good and bad about the game with the multiplayer so far, and zombies. I have not gone over the campaign yet, but I will be going over that fairly shortly within the next week or two, the entire thing, and I'll have a review for it for you guys. We're also going to talk about FireWalk Studios that made Concord is closing. They also, Sony might even have an antitrust lawsuit going on with the CWA because of what they've been doing. So that's actually quite interesting. You got to get an update with Netflix and their gaming. We're also going to talk about the U.S. Copyright Office, and it's not a good thing for the preservation of games. We're also going to chat about Dragon Age Veilguard. That literally just came out yesterday. We're also got downsizing of not a huge studio, but fairly large. This would be considered like a double A. And yeah, we're also going to talk about November games as well for this month. And we got some more stuff to talk about with Ubisoft. So thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always like, sub, all that jazz. But hey, let's go ahead and get into the news. And the whole idea with this is there's a lot of news out there. There's a lot of videos. It's hours of watching, reading articles, all of that stuff every week. And the whole idea is to consolidate it all here for you in just one podcast, one package. So let's go ahead and start with Black Ops 6. We got the good and the bad about the games. So we got round zombies back, which is fun. The maps are actually pretty large, but we only got two of them. We got Liberty Falls and Terminus. Liberty Falls I've played myself. We do have things that we remember with like the Pack-a-Punch. We have stuff that you can buy off the walls, but it's like they've taken some of the older zombies, like from Modern Warfare 2 or even from Cold War, and mixed it in with some of the older stuff that we remember from some of the other Black Ops, like the Pack-a-Punch, like just buying off the wall, like all of the perk machines that we remember, and things like that. And so that is kind of cool. They've done a pretty good job. They've also added some features, like there's a solo mode where you can actually now pause. You can't pause indefinitely, but you have a pretty considerable amount of time on your timer to be able to just pause the game, which is nice. You also have a save file. And so if you don't want to try to get to level 50 or 100 all in one go and go with the lack of sleep and headache and all of that mess in the morning, then yeah, all you literally have to do is just actually save your solo playthrough, which is kind of cool. Like, we've never actually seen that before. That's pretty neat. So yeah, zombies overall is actually fairly fun. We also get prestige back from the game. So you get a lot of rewards in the game. You get to collect all of these. You get to push it as far as you want. There's a ton of prestige to do. There's a ton of grinding to actually do for those that actually want to really focus on playing the game or are going to grind it every day. There's plenty of content for you to go for. And this is really nice because there's actually not really a ton in the store to actually buy right now. There's just a couple of things, and that's it. We will continue to get seasons. We do have our first season drop coming very, very soon to actually kick things off and get things started. So I'm sure there will be more bundles and things like that, but the amount of stuff you can actually earn and grind for in the game is very reminiscent of like the older Call of Duties that had prestige and things you could, and skins you could unlock in the game, which is just so nice. The file size for Black Ops 6 is about 122 gigs. This is with Call of Duty headquarters. If you install everything, which is going back all the way from Modern Warfare 2 to also adding Modern Warfare 3 stuff, plus Black Ops 6, you're looking at over 300 gigs. But you can select what you download in the options, which is really nice. Many of the maps for multiplayer are quite a bit smaller. There still are a few big ones. But there's generally maps for every single type of gun. So if you have a shotgun, if you have to grind the pistol, or you want to grind the sniper rifle, or anything in between, basically there's maps to actually do that. And this is a map right here called Warhead. And this is kind of a smaller map, of course. You can really see a good chunk of it just from one corner or the other. But of course you got that big massive building in the middle. So a lot of the maps are designed to be fast-paced for you to not be able to camp out in any particular spot for too long, and for every, generally every position to be gotten to. If you have a team that's actually working pretty well, though, at least on this map as well as a few others like Gala or the Pit, you can actually close off the enemy team and just shove them into the meat grinder. You can still do that, but I feel like a lot of players are just still playing solo today. They don't really have clans. They don't really have groups of friends that they can play with, 3 or more. And so, yeah, normally that doesn't happen. So generally, you're going to get your kill, you're going to get killed, and it's just going to be a trade-off for a lot of the game. Let's see. There's also a mode without kill streaks. This is small maps only, but again, as far as I can remember, we haven't had an actual playlist like this in quite some time. It's kind of nice, actually. You don't have to worry about chopper, some crazy massive hailstorm coming down, and even talking about the kill streaks too. The kill streaks are there; they're possible, but again, these skill-based matchmaking, which we'll get into next, is so incredibly tight. That there's really not a lot of kill streaks in the game anyway. It's basically the RC, UAV, counter UAV, and maybe a few more actual lethal things down the road, but very rarely do people actually get that. Basically, they're camping or they're so insane with mouse and keyboard that they're a pro player that, yeah, they're just, that's very few and far between, though, which is great. And but yeah, honestly, there's not a lot of kill streaks in the game, and it makes it feel, what's the word? It makes it feel a little more fair, a little more even on the field, and so that's actually kind of nice. Also, Omni movement feels pretty good for the most part. You accidentally slide at times, or you're slipping around a little more than you want to when you're sprinting. It almost feels like, too, you're kind of just running, juking all the time, but your side movement and backwards movement is also as fast as jogging forward, and we've never also had that before. And so this also makes it pretty different for the game because the movement is very quick, and so when you have these small maps, quick movement, there's a lot of stuff going down and happening all the time. I mean, there's times I reload, or I'm trying to reload, and I'm not even finished before I'm dead. It kind of feels like shipment, and actually, I would say a lot of the maps actually feel like that. So players in the past asking for smaller maps or more of them, well, here we go. We actually get them in this game, and now some people are complaining that the maps are all too small, which that's not necessarily the case. We still have some big ones like Red Card and Scud, and I'm sure if I thought some more, there'd be some others. But overall, Omni movement actually feels pretty good, and we have a good mixture of maps. So let's get into the bad, shall we? We have skill-based matchmaking, and it feels insane. It's so tight of a range when solo, it's unfun most of the time. With players, it levels out a little more because it's probably factoring in each one of the players or one of the players with the lowest level of skill-based matchmaking, and it feels a little more fair. Sometimes you can get some of those bloodthirsties or you can get those, triple kills, and that's kind of nice. You actually feel like you're doing something. I have noticed, too, with ping. I play with some buddies in the UK, and I play on their servers to help them out, of course, and so I go from about 30 ping to 140, and with this jump, I'm not entirely sure if it's just playing with other players, or if it's actually the ping itself, or a mixture of both, or something else. But I feel like when I'm playing with them, the game experiences feel a lot more fun. They feel a lot more engaging. I'm generally getting the same amount of kills, but I'm dying less, and so that's kind of nice. So yeah, maybe if you're struggling, find some folks to play with. Whether you're on PlayStation, Xbox, or PC, or whatever. See if you can find some in a group or forum or whatever your setup is on your console. See if you can actually play with some folks to make it a little better experience. Plus, too, if you got other people to suffer with, it just feels better. We're all honest about that. Generally, every once in a while solo, I felt like 1 out of 5 matches, so roughly 20% of the time, I felt like skill-based matchmaking was actually dumbed down a little bit for me for one match. And then I would do better, and it would tick right back up for the other 80% of the matches, which is pretty insane. So now, if they actually dumbed down their skill-based matchmaking, this actually kind of would be a little bit more fun, because Instead, what you have is it is sweaty. It is the sweatiest. Oh my word! It is some of the sweatiest stuff I've ever played in a Call of Duty game. It feels worse than Modern Warfare 2, than Vanguard. It feels worse than Modern Warfare 3 or Cold War. I mean, it is tight. It just feels really tight, which is crazy. Another thing is disappearing bullets. So whether I was playing at less than 30 ping or 140 ping or 150, whatever it was with my UK buddies, the ping didn't seem to matter. After I would shoot and I would die, the bullets wouldn't actually reach their target, even though I knew they were spot on. And this happens every single time. So I don't feel like this is packet loss, or I don't feel like this is packet burst or something else. This is literally just as like the game is designed. And I remember this in playing some other games too, like in World at War or War Thunder, a tank game, where you could shoot, but if you died, well, your shell disappeared along with your life, right? And that's kind of crap because it's impossible to actually get an afterlife. Somehow I was able to get it once. I was able to get it once yesterday, which I was surprised. But Afterlife is basically with just lethals, just grenades or Simtex or whatever you got. And that's kind of, that's kind of frustrating. Because no matter what gun you have, you never seem to actually make connect, after you actually die. So hopefully they can fix that. Hopefully people can find that too. I know I'm just a small channel, but like I hope other channels can actually pay attention to that and promote that themselves, because that's an issue that I'm seeing consistently while I'm playing. And again, this is whether I'm playing on my own servers with 30 ping or less, or playing in with UK servers of 140 or more. It doesn't matter what the ping is. So it's not a server issue. It's not packet burst. It's not packet loss. It's pretty much every single time, 99.99% of the time, my bullets are disappearing in mid-flight after I've clearly shot them already. But yeah, I've died, so those bullets just seem to disappear. At higher skill-based matchmaking, folks are definitely camping a lot more because, again, it is that grindy, sweaty mess. They're sliding all over. There's really no tactics either at this point. Everybody's just Rambo, and this is what I love, too, about Battlefield or some of the older CODs, is that there was tactics. You were paying attention to what your rest of your team was doing, which was cool, and you can actually work together. The only mode that really forces tactics is HVT, High Value Target, and it's where you're figuring out where the HVT is, where other players are on the map, and you're filling in the gaps or the chinks in the armor to actually make sure that your HVT stays alive. And then you have a few people that actually go and run out and try to actually get more kills, or maybe your HVT wants to get some kills too. And so you're all pushing together, and that actually makes it fun. It's actually one of my more favorite modes because I enjoy the teamwork and the camaraderie and stuff. It's actually really nice. Also, domination and headquarters at times, people really work together. There's people sitting back. There's people trying to capture. There's people trying to flank all the time or push forward behind enemy lines to come in from behind and wipe a whole bunch of them out. So that's kind of nice, but most of the time, it's just a whole bunch of Rambos out there. One thing we are definitely missing, no party games. Really? It's this is a Treyarch game with pretty much every single Black Ops game that we've had. We've had party games, including Cold War, and we don't have that this time. I do hope they bring back Prop Hunt from Cold War. That was such a good one. But yeah, it just feels lacking. So I'm hoping they actually bring that forward and put it into the game. One other issue, I feel like being behind cover. I'm going for it, or I've ducked down and I'm behind cover and I'm dying anyway. And I know that sometimes looking back at the footage, it's not that there's penetration, because it's impossible with the particular types of cover that I'm behind. Some others, yes, it makes sense. I'm getting shot through the cover and I'm not going to make it. But other times, it's, what's the word? Other times it's something really sturdy, right? And there's no way bullets should be getting through that. And I feel like I get shot anyway. And then I go back and look at the kill cam. And yeah, I can see that, I had a little piece of me sticking out or whatever. But I feel like I was actually completely hidden. Now, this could be packet loss. This could be packet burst or something else. So yeah, the servers still aren't great. This used to be a lot worse during the beta. It is definitely improved with the launch of the game, but there's still definitely some things. Oh, that was a good death there. There's also some things to still work on and improve upon, because that does actually get pretty frustrating. So far for a rating, I gotta give, and I'm really harsh on this, but I gotta give the multiplayer a 40 out of 100. And it's because all of the elements are there for a better experience. And it is a better experience. I love the gunplay. I love the sounds. I love how generally loud everything is. I love all of the settings that I have in the game. The launch has been very, very good. The beta was also very, very good. Generally really stable. Some things were improved from the beta compared to the launch in relation to servers. There's a lot of really good things about the game. There's a lot of nostalgia. They brought Prestige back. The maps are fun. There's a lot of things to grind for. It's easy to get into lobbies with other folks and play with other folks. It's quick to get in. There's a lot of good things about the game, but what drags it down is skill-based matchmaking. It is so incredibly intense by yourself. It is insane. It's unfun, honestly. And so if I can play with other players, I'm going to be playing a heck of a lot more. If I'm just going to be playing by myself, maybe 30 minutes to an hour. Again, generally what people were doing with Modern Warfare 2, Modern Warfare 3, Vanguard. Again, yeah, it is so incredibly tight. It's hard to feel like I'm actually doing anything. And I have nights, too, where it's mostly defeats where I'm by myself. I'll have 6 defeats and 8 victories. And that's just what's happening. And it's like, I'm done. I'm logging off. Because, yeah, it gets so frustrating because you feel like you can't get progression. You feel like you can't get kills. And it definitely gets harder as you progress forward to get through 40 whatever levels of your gun, or to rank up yourself to get to level 55 in order to prestige again or whatever. It literally does take forever. And it's a really slow grind with just how tight that skill-based matchmaking is. But yeah, it's kind of a bummer. So far, I got about 14, 15 hours of multiplayer, just to emphasize that. The zombies itself, I'm rating it a 65 out of 100 with what I've seen so far. It's fun. It's enjoyable. There's kind of some new things to work towards, some objectives to complete like we've seen with other Black Ops games or other zombie modes. And it's definitely fun with friends. And the maps are actually fairly large. And there's some things to figure out, like with Liberty Falls, there's a safe to figure out. There's actually a combination that you need to find, and then you can unlock the safe. And who even knows what's in there? I don't have any idea, but I'd love to find out. But it does get boring by yourself after a while. Some of the features are nice to have, again, like being able to save, being able to pause. But the game still actually feels pretty easy at level 12. Now, a lot of us veterans like myself that played World at War, by the time you got to 8 or 9, you could go down. With just little stupid mistakes, little teeny errors that didn't seem like much at the time until there was no way to actually get out. But with Liberty Falls, Terminus I haven't played yet, but with Liberty Falls, there's a lot of area to actually move around and jump around, and it's pretty easy to actually get away and just turn around and just keep shooting. So I'll actually link that down below so that you guys can see it for yourself. Yeah, the campaign, haven't played that yet. I have heard it's actually shorter. It's like 3 hours, 3.5 hours to do the entire campaign, so it is a very short campaign, but people also really enjoy it. So we'll see. I will give it eventually a full rating. I'll play the entire campaign. I'll chapter the whole thing. I'll link it all together for one big video, and then you guys can just watch it. If you're interested too, the campaign also requires, well, yeah, for the story anyway, it requires for you to actually play Cold War. Cold War campaign I already have up. It's about 4 hours long for the entire campaign, and you can go ahead and watch that if you'd like while you're waiting for the campaign for Black Ops 6. And so yeah, I'll get that. I'll get that done for you guys. Hopefully this month before Thanksgiving. That's my goal. I do want to talk to you about skill-based damage. I don't believe this is real, and I'll tell you why. I do think there's higher damage amounts on the head and the upper chest, and then lower damage amounts on the lower chest abdomen, and on the limbs. And so I notice when I'm playing, even when you're watching the gameplay here, if I'm hitting the limb, I'm getting a particular type of hit marker. Even in the lower abdomen or in between the hips, I'm getting a lower type of hit marker. If I'm actually hitting center mass, I'm getting a better hit marker, and if I'm getting the head, I'm getting the best hit marker. And so I think the point values are actually pretty far away and skewed, because I've seen that if I get 2 or 3 hits in the head, I'm done, right? It's a very quick time to kill. But if I'm getting a whole bunch of limb shots, it feels like 7, 8 shots. It's actually pretty considerable, sometimes even more than that, depending on the range and all of that stuff. And then there's those factors too. You have attachments on your gun that can increase your headshot damage, or that it can increase your gun range damage, or even increase the rate of fire that your weapon does without hindering damage at all. There's also other things too that depending on the range yourself or what type you're using. Generally, the shotgun actually has a really far range even before you get the slug. And that in and of itself is definitely a change. A lot of the shotguns usually felt really short ranged, but they're definitely longer ranged in this one. Also, snipers are one-shot kills, pretty much anywhere in the abdomen or, of course, the head. And that's also a really big change. So there's more opportunities for you to die instantly, unfortunately. And that's kind of a more real experience there. So, yeah, again, I don't think it's skill-based damage. That is definitely being pushed around. People are enjoying the views on their channels talking about that, but I don't personally see how they could actually do that. There's also the issue with packet loss, packet burst, ping issues. I personally have a really stable connection, so my ping isn't going crazy like maybe it was on previous launches for other COD games. But even if we see here, it's like with somebody being so far enough away, it's actually taking quite a few shots to even get them down on the ground. And generally, if they're getting body shots or headshots, I'm going down first. So again, it kind of depends on what gun. Certainly, some guns too have a massive damage boost compared to others. Some of the submachine guns, in my opinion, are way too powerful. Because again, I got an LMG. I run that pretty often, and it's frustrating to get that first shot on target, and they just whip around and just mow you down like nothing from halfway across the field. And that actually does happen pretty often. But again, if you have the attachments, if you have the increased damage range, if you have all of these other things that are improved or that are pushing your damage of your gun or keeping it more steady, and you're a good shot or cheating, you're going to be dying first. And I'm sure there's probably a little bit of cheating going on, but most of the kill cams that I see, they look legit. They look really good. Again, there's missed shots. It's not completely lasered in. There's some good lucky shots in there, but generally I feel like there's actually not a ton of cheaters compared to the previous Call of Duty games that we've had, which has been really nice. So, I don't know. I honestly want to do some testing on this with some of my UK buddies just to actually see damage values and see how long it takes with what type of guns, and actually kind of do an analysis to see if skill-based damage can actually be a real thing. But to change that dynamically from match to match or even mid-game sounds kind of crazy. And honestly, I don't believe that's what's going on. So, yeah, ultimately what I think this hit marker change does between limb, torso, 2 different parts of the torso, and of course the head, I think what this does ultimately is it rewards players that are good at the game. Whether we like to hear it or not. Again, you see a lot of my shots. I'm getting like limb shots. I'm getting lower body shots. I'm getting a ton of those. And I'm not getting those like higher end hit markers a lot of the time. And, but again, that's what I've trained before is like aim for center mass, right? Don't aim for the head because you're probably going to mess in reality. And that's just how I've trained myself. So that's just what I shoot for. But for other people that have trained to just go for those headshots, that have played COD a ton and all that stuff, that's probably what they're going for. And I feel like you get a heck of a lot more damage per hit with a headshot than you do anywhere else, especially if you got the attachment to amplify that, which is a type of gun barrel. So, yeah, that's my overall thoughts just with how Black Ops 6 has been, with how it's released. It has sold a ton. Doing some math, I'm coming up with roughly 20 million copies sold. So far, we know from 2023, we know that there's about 425 million total copies sold for Call of Duty, and we know that Modern Warfare 2 sold roughly about 17 million copies pretty quickly. We also know that Modern Warfare 3 sold 25% less, so that lands at about 13 or 14 million copies total. Modern Warfare 3, that there's been honestly a lot of that there hasn't been as many copies sold, of course. But yeah, we're doing the math, we're doing estimates. I understand too that there's a lot of other what's the word? There's also other sales of other games as well in the Call of Duty franchise, but to hit 75 million copies sold roughly in a year is pretty crazy, and Black Ops 6 had to be a really big proponent of that. This has also been one of the more hyped games in a long time, and I'm even a lot more excited myself. Of course, I mean, the last game I was really excited for was Cold War. But yeah, doing the math, we've probably sold about 20 million copies, and this does not include, as far as I can see with the language that they're using and other stuff, 20 million copies are actual units sold. This is not players in Black Ops 6, and this is not like Game Pass users. I would also like to see that too with actual Game Pass users, but we won't get that maybe until next quarter, which we got to wait another 3 months for that because they just had their yearly or their quarterly earnings call. So, but yeah, Black Ops 6 is honestly doing very, very well. They are making considerable money doing this, whether it's Game Pass again or honestly PlayStation players. I gotta say too, with all of my matches, the majority of my lobbies are 60 or 70% PlayStation players. There's a few PC in there every once in a while. I don't see that very often. It's mostly console. So I don't think PC players are really playing that much. But if PC players are playing on Steam at 300,000 at launch, and I'm seeing mostly PlayStation folks, there are a lot of PlayStation folks that actually bought the game, and Xbox gets the majority of that sale. So yeah, Xbox is making money on this. I'm very curious to see what next earnings call is to see how well their gaming revenue is actually doing. There was one other thing, it's somewhere in here, that I wanted to talk about. Let me see if I can find it. Because this was pretty insane. Oh yeah, here we are. So there's actually a pay-to-win feature in Black Ops 6. This is the audio profile. So a third-party company called Embody has partnered with Activision to create a free advanced audio profile to increase directional accuracy while you're playing. Right? That sounds great. Doesn't matter if the headset. But the thing is that if you like it enough, you can actually pay for your own personal profile at $20 for the first 5 years. And then you got to pay for it again. And so this is actually really interesting because they do say it's a better profile than the default or better than the enhanced one that they give you for free, because they have you take a video basically of your face and a slow movement video of your face to look at your ears, to look at your face, your head, and to really completely fine-tune, basically a scan of your face and ears to fine-tune directional audio for your audio profile in the game. Now, how beneficial that actually is, I have no idea, which kind of sounds insane. But like, you'll be able to hear footsteps better, you'll be able to hear directional gunfire better, like it will be more precise. Now, the difference between the default versus the enhanced, well, the enhanced is definitely better. I can't explain how, but I am definitely more accurate in pinpointing exactly where people are, to the point where I can just shoot through the wall and sometimes and hit a target, right? Which is pretty insane. Something kind of thin that I can shoot through. I can tell where they are over there and just let it rip through the wall, and I can actually get killed sometimes with my light machine gun, which is pretty insane. Or hit markers. But with an actual scan of my face, I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure how they can really improve it compared to where it already is. There's actually a 30-day trial. You can do everything at home. and they'll build your profile for you literally right there. I'm guessing with AI, because I don't think there's actually people building it, to be personally honest. And then, yeah, you can have your own custom profile. Maybe there wasn't any word of actually redoing it every so often. It's just built, and then you have it, and then you can select to use your actual custom profile in the game. But it does make me interested, though. It's like, is this actually the first legit play-to-win feature that we have in Black Ops 6 in a Call of Duty game? Now, we have had some other things, right? Being able to start with maybe a UAV for Warzone with a particular skin bundle for $20. Shh, we're not supposed to talk about that. Or the Rosa skin, which is completely all black and good for shadows. Or how about the Groot skin that they eventually had to put fire in because people could literally blend in the grass and next to a tree stump and just disappear. Shh, we're not supposed to talk about those. But again, it's like those were pay to win features, and it's like, oops, sorry, we goobered, we messed up. But honestly, with this is literally like, hey, pay us money for the best possible experience that you can have. And if you're having a better audio experience than everybody else, well, you're just clearly having an advantage. Maybe not much of one, but there is an advantage. And I am not okay with that stuff. The whole point of competitive games is for everything to be the same with choices, and people can choose to play how they wish. But again, everything is equal, right? Because in any type of competition, it's supposed to be fair, whether it's the Olympics, whether it's racing, or whether it's something else. Everything has to be attuned to each individual player so that it can be fair, and you can ensure that. But with this, that's kind of an issue. Well, even just with the default setting versus the enhanced audio profile that comes free, a lot of people I don't even think really know about that. So if you do play Black Ops 6, take some time to actually check that. But this is kind of ridiculous. Because again, it's like, it's kind of a subscription service. And I think that's where they definitely want to get you. And if this does take off, I guarantee you the price will go up and the time will be shortened. Maybe it'll be 3 years, maybe it'll be 2 years, maybe it'll just be $20 for 1 year. I don't know. But again, if they can actually make money off of this and increase the price and there's demand for it, well, they're going to do it, of course. It's a business, right? That's how business and how capitalism works. But the thing, too, that I thought about, it's like, does this really improve your profile, your audio profile that much, your experience that much, to really be able to pay for that $20? Because how much better can it really be? The advanced audio profile is already really good, and I suggest y'all turn it on so that you guys can be more competitive in the game. But again, it's like the paid profile, how much better is it really? There are some channels that are going to be testing this, like Nero's Cinema, and I think there was one more, though I can't remember the name at this point. Personally, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to be busy doing other stuff, but I am going to be keeping tabs on this to actually see what people think about it, with testing it out for 30 days. But yeah, it's just kind of too makes me think, how much is Activision making off of each sale? It's not like Activision is just like, hey, sure, you can make a profile, you get 100% of the profits. No, it doesn't work that way. No partnership, no deal ever works that way. There's always a split. And so Activision and ultimately Microsoft is probably going to be making money off of this. And they're going to be making money off of PlayStation players that are going to be doing this, probably. Generally, they seem to be a lot more competitive, to me, honestly, and there's a heck of a lot more of them, too. But the thing, too, to remember is that this isn't for past-gen consoles. It's just for PlayStation 5, Series S, and Series X. Even PC is left out of this. It's just for the console. So that makes me curious, too. Why can't they do it for other consoles? What is it about just the current-gen consoles that they can do it for, but not the other stuff? Maybe they're just waiting to see if there's actually a benefit. Or maybe there's something else going on there. So I am curious about this, even though I don't agree with it at all. I am actually quite curious about this to see if they expand it, if they add other services or increase the price later down the road, or how just people generally feel about it. But it is kind of, well, it is messed up. I'll just put it that way. It is definitely messed up. Okay, so we're done with Black Ops 6. We're going to move on to the rest of the news. Let's talk about the U.S. Copyright Office. They announced they are no longer allowing exemptions for game preservation. And it comes down to licensing. So generally for older games, if they were online or they could be able to be sold, there were exemptions that were allowed to be given for these games to these other businesses or whatever to allow the game to be able to be sold, able to be emulated, whatever. But you'll notice that some games on your store, some of the older ones, like Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow is a good example. They're not available for purchase anymore. And again, this comes down to licensing. Usually you get multiple companies that collaborate together under different type of parent umbrellas, and somebody doesn't pay somebody, whatever, and so yeah, the licensing's got to go bye-bye because someone's not willing to do their part to basically keep the game alive. And so then the game just goes dead, which sucks because Splinter Cell Pandora Tomorrow is an amazing game. It's wonderful. I'm actually going to see if I can buy a old Xbox copy and then just shove it into my Series X and get my library to register the game, and then I can actually just play the game, which is great. But this is definitely another issue with some of the older stuff out there because it's like, okay, well, if we don't have exemptions, 87% of the games as of 2010 and earlier, 87% of those games are not currently being sold or even accessible to buy unless you just want to be a part of the used retro game market. And that's kind of insane because there's a ton of the games that some of us grew up with that are generally in our upper 20s or even closer to 40s now for some of us. Yes, some of those people still actually play games. Me, myself, I'm 34. And yeah, I still play games just about every day. But there's a lot of the older games that I think of that I've even looked for, and they're not available for purchase anywhere. Or some of the bundles for these games, they're not available. And it just kind of sucks because this allows actually some of these games to disappear into obscurity. And again, the publishers don't care. The companies that own these IPs, they don't really care. They just want to do what makes money. And that's a lot of live service microtransaction games or mobile games or whatever else. I'm sure people are super excited for Destiny Rising, the mobile game, because yeah, that's absolutely what we wanted, right? But again, it's we also have companies like Antstream Arcade that actually provide online access in some capacity for a lot of these older games. But companies like these are in trouble because they can't get those exemptions anymore for the lack of licensing to be able to sell a product or a service for these older games, which again is kind of insane. I'm sure too this also works on hindering emulators, which Nintendo has really been going after, by the way. I feel like they're gearing up for their Switch 2 release, or maybe it has to do with something else. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, the retro game market, they say that the reason they're not allowing these exemptions anymore is because they're worried about the online access to these older games in this actual retro game market, and that it's going to affect that market and basically crash it or hinder it, or people can't make money at it anymore with these authentic games, which is ridiculous because you can basically look up any game you want. Let's take some of the Game Boy Advanced or Game Boy SP Pokemon games, and you can find unauthentic copies along with the authentic ones, and one is way cheaper than the other one. Same game, and it is kind of a risk, but I guarantee you that people take it, otherwise they wouldn't even be on the market in the first place. And so that's kind of disappointing to me that the U.S. Copyright Office is really not taking the time to really think about this completely all the way through, because again, there's not really going to be a way to preserve these games. And that's a problem, personally. I think that's a massive issue. And again, saying that it's going to affect the market or whatever, or that people are basically going to use this online capability with Antstream Arcade, for example, or with some of these games that they'll actually have recreational fun with them. It's that's a problem. It's we do that with TV shows. We do that with music. We do that with movies. like, what the heck are they talking about? Like, it really doesn't make a ton of sense, actually, why they ruled this way, because it's not like the companies are making money anyway off of these older games. And we're talking like older games, like all the way back to the 70s or even 80s. Um, Again, it's like they're not doing anything with them. And like if we think of just some IPs that like Xbox or Nintendo or PlayStation have that we haven't seen in a while, there's actually quite a big list. Now, ultimately, there's a few things or a few reasons for this. Ultimately, they want their remasters to sell, or they want the ability to have remasters to sell. So that's one thing. But again, these remasters, in most cases, they're not great. They're not great. And this is kind of an issue, like Silent Hill 2 and 3 HD collection. That was worse than the actual games. Metal Gear Solid Volume 1 collection for 1, 2, and 3. They're worse than the actual games. I own it myself. I can tell you firsthand. Splinter Cell 1, 2, and 3 collection. Same problem. Pandora Tomorrow is an absolute flippin' frame rate joke. Don't buy it. It's total garbage. And yeah, it's just incredibly frustrating. It's like, okay, we're not getting better games. We're not allowed to play the older ones, and we can't buy them. Now, the patent office or the copyright office did say that the older copies that are still floating out there, you can still go out there and buy and play. That's legal. But again, it's like there's no more accessible copies being allowed anymore. Just what's out there is what's out there. And as games break down over time, I mean, you get where I'm going with this. Eventually, they're just going to disappear, right? And there's no way to get them back. And so, yeah, this really sucks because this is going to make it incredibly difficult even going forward with this ruling. And this is permanent, by the way, folks. This would have to be completely revisited at some point and undone by the Copyright Office or maybe by a judge or some other type of lawsuit to bring it into question. But like this would take some pretty heavy legal stuff going on to actually reverse this decision. And it makes it so that a lot of the games that we have to play are the ones that we have today. And that's not overly what we want. Now, there is another aspect to this is selling subscriptions. Let's take a look at PlayStation, for example. PlayStation has basically a backwards compatibility list that you pay for, PlayStation Premium. And it's a lot of older games from like some PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, quite a bit of PlayStation 3, a lot of PlayStation 4, and then of course you have some PlayStation 5 titles on there too. But again, it's like I don't want to have to pay for a subscription for a backwards compatibility list. I just either want you to remaster them or allow me to play them on current hardware. Because if I own a physical copy, I should be able to shove it into my machine. It goes, ding, you own this, and allows me to basically emulate it on my current stuff. There's absolutely a way they could do that, but they don't because it's not profitable. I'll put it that way, which sucks. And so, yeah, this is kind of a bad day, but to put it into perspective with movies of what this is like taking, and I heard this as an example, so I'm going to use it, but it's like taking a VHS tape of an old movie of like the Titanic, having to put it into a VCR and actually enjoy watching the movie. Which just sounds ridiculous, right? Because that's not actually how we consume movies today. It's not how we consume music either. It'd be like having to get a cassette tape. Oh my gosh, for those that don't know what that is, I'm so sorry. But it's like having to have a cassette tape of some music and having to listen to it that way instead of just hearing it on YouTube or having it on an old iPod or your phone or whatever else. Or maybe you actually do have a cassette player and you like to listen to it that way with your massive speakers from the 80s. But again, it's like we have the choices on how to consume a lot of this media. And a lot of the older movies have too been remade, like The Hunt for Red October. You can go out and buy that as a physical copy today on Blu-ray, which is great. Wonderful movie too, by the way. You guys should honestly watch it. But like this is where it gets frustrating because they're treating games differently. And there's got to be money involved behind this, of course, because otherwise it doesn't make any other sense to me. There's really no reason they should be withholding that, stopping us from being able to have these games, to play these games, and to preserve these games. So, waited 3 years to get that announcement from the U.S. Copyright Office, and That's flipping horrible. Yeah, that sucks. That really sucks. Okay, next, let's talk about FireWalk Studios is closing. So they made Concord, and again, Concord didn't last very long. It was basically a couple of weeks. The game director, Ryan Ellis, actually stepped down after the game was closed. And there was talk that, oh yeah, they're updating the game. They're going to bring this free to play. They're going to try to bring it back. They shouldn't, whatever. Well, I think they heard people because they're shuttering the entire studio. 172 employees are affected. I don't know if this is the entire number of the studio or if some are, again, being merged in with like Sony Entertainment or something else. But as far as I know, yeah, the studio's done. All the employees are gone. That's what I was able to gather from my research. Sony also made it clear that Concord is being sunsetted. It is not coming back. It is not coming back. It's done. And they're just getting rid of the IP. So there's no free-to-play model coming. If you have a physical copy, you got a piece of history, I guess. Congratulations. Put it on your wall because, yeah, it ain't coming back. It's a dead game in 2 weeks. That has got to be a record. That's pretty incredible. Full release, hundreds of millions of dollars. That is just crazy. Sony is also closing Neo Koei, which is, sorry if I mispronounced that. I'm American. This is a mobile game studio that Sony also has, but they're closing that as well. The game will cease development immediately, and the game will also be sunsetted, and all employees gone. That's another 38 employees that have just lost their job. Looking at how much Sony lost on Concord, well, we know there was about $200 million for core development. We know a lot of this was actually Sony's money. Buying FireWalk Studio, we know that Sony did that. That cost them a lot of money as well. We don't have a solid number on this, but again, we can probably gather that this was over $100 million to actually buy the studio, maybe even $200 million, because again, this was a AAA game. Been in development already when they bought them for quite a few years. Also buying the cost of the intellectual property. So that was money too. I guarantee you that wasn't cheap. Plus the cost to operate the studio until closure. So from the time they bought them in 22 to closure today, that's also been money out of their pocket. Also, the refunds, while not a big number, it still does affect their bottom line. So also the refunds on all purchases, basically that were digital, they got refunded all of that, and for anybody that bought it on Steam or maybe some other third-party stores, there's usually a cut that those stores get from a sale, but it's not like that fee goes back to Sony once it gets refunded. Sony just eats the fee with every copy that's sold. And this isn't just Sony, this is Xbox and everybody else. This is just how it works. If you're going to have a product or a service on someone else's third-party store, well, you're going to be paying a fee for every time it sells. That's just how it is. So again, that wasn't a massive amount of money, but that still does hurt their bottom line. All Steam sales would have lost Sony about roughly 30% with Steam's fee, which is quite a good chunk of money with every sale. Gosh. And again, yeah, this wasn't a large amount. It's estimated there was roughly about 25,000, maybe even, let's say, 50,000 copies. It's still not like it's a ton of money compared to buying the studio, buying the IP, operating the studio for 2 years to failure, all of that kind of stuff. An insider did say that Concord cost about $400 million total for Sony. But again, we don't have definitive numbers on this, so take that with a grain of salt. With also the closure announcement, the CWA, the Communication Workers of America, they're looking at actually bringing Sony up as a monopoly and having monopolistic behavior, and they're going to be talking to antitrust regulators, policymakers, and stakeholders to basically say, hey, their practices of shutting down these studios, especially ones that they have non-exclusive content for, which I'm assuming is like Neo Koei, the mobile game company, or the mobile game studio. I'm assuming that was actually going to be kind of for everybody. But they're saying, look, they're taking these non-exclusive studios and games, they're closing and shuttering them all, and they're just that is slowly continuing to monopolize the IPs that they have. Because again, it's like if you actually want to play stuff that Sony is making, you have to play on Sony's hardware. And that does become an antitrust issue because it's like you're walling off what's available and you're closing everything off. Now, I will say that it's like, well, that's what Nintendo does. So I don't know if the CWA actually has a footing here. It doesn't say that they're going to be charging or that they're going to be filing, but I think the CWA is going to be taking some time to actually see if they do have some footing there for an antitrust lawsuit against Sony, and we might be seeing that next year. And so, yeah, again, it's like if you just keep taking money, spending money, taking on employees, and then shuttering the studios and the games that are available to first and third party, it doesn't look very good. It looks like you're just being anti-competitive and you're just wanting people to stick with your exclusive stuff. But again, how we can't, have antitrust stuff for Sony or for Nintendo, I'm not sure. But does Sony have an actual based office in America, or is it still over in Japan? Again, I don't know the jargon and lingo and all of that stuff, but I will keep you up to date if I actually hear anything on this. But I actually was pretty curious about this because the CWA seems kind of pissed, and they're kind of seeing this as a long-term problem. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I think that'll be very interesting. Let's talk about Netflix. They closed Team Blue, which was a AAA game studio that they had. Again, Netflix announced earlier this year, or maybe even last year, I can't quite remember, that they were going to be taking the time to make some games, make some big games for their platform, not just be about movies and stuff. But I think they're understanding that it's difficult because the three big hires that they had for the AAA studio, well, they're all gone. And then they're probably seeing the risk of AAA. And let's be honest, it's really not doing very well. And it is expensive because the budgets for AAA is basically what makes them AAA. It's a lot of people. It's a lot of money. There's licensing stuff. And there's already a ton of studios and publishers already failing at trying to get AAA games out there. And Netflix is probably just seeing the writing on the wall and wanting to take a little bit less risk and just say, yeah, let's just do TV shows and movies. I think if they focused more on actual adaptations, I think they'd be fine. I think it would work great. But yeah, when I heard that they were going to be doing video games, it's like, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to work out so good, but that was a lot sooner than I expected. Let's talk about Dragon Age Veilguard. So that actually released yesterday. So far, it's been a mixed bag. Critics are rating it pretty high. 80s, 90s, 100. Okay, the average rating on some of these sites like Metacritic, for example, are in the low to mid 80s. Steam currently had it yesterday. Excuse me. Still fighting over being sick, folks. Just is what it is. And life moves on in a painful way every day. Steam has it as currently 77% with a peak of 70,000 players on launch. Not necessarily looking great for that. We'll see how it does on the weekend for next week's news, if there's any news there. PlayStation Time Tracker, last 24 hours, it's number 27. So it has risen up on the charts, but it's not lightning fast of a launch because it's not even topping the top 100 in the last 7 days. So, like some other games have, like Black Myth Wukong or Space Marine 2, right? It was literally 1-2 days, boom, they were freaking on there for the week, and they were getting a whole bunch of plays on the time tracker. But that's not the case for Veilguard, so that's kind of a bummer. Black Ops 6 is currently number 1 on time tracker for 24 hours and the last 7 days. And so, and by a far margin. It's pretty insane how high it is. It's like 50% higher than the next game. So, yeah, people are playing the crap out of Black Ops 6. Some channels also, though, don't really seem to like the story. The repetitive gameplay, bad pacing of the acts 1, 2, and 3, frustration with aspects of the abilities, some of them kind of being broken, boring enemies, combat, and bad voice acting. So it's kind of weird. It's like you got these official critics like IGN, Umbrella, and others like VGA 247 and Rock Paper Shotgun and some others that are like, yeah, this is great, this is amazing. Even some giving it 100 out of 100. Like, Really? 100? Like you're saying it's better than Black Myth Wukong, Space Marine 2, or Astrobot? You really? It's the only game to get 100 this year. Of course, they're entitled to their opinion, and that's what it is, folks. You should always take everything with a grain of salt, including mine, when I do my reviews. But like that's kind of insane. And then you have these other people that have followed Dragon Age for a long time, several channels, and they're like, "These are my issues." It does have some good aspects, or it does shine, but like clearly it's not an 80 or a 90. Right? This is not a great game. This is maybe a good game, or a fair game, or an okay game, depending on their own preferences. But a lot of this too is comparing with the past Dragon Ages. And of course, why not? Why shouldn't it be compared? And compared to the other Dragon Ages, it fails generally according to these other opinions on YouTube. Like MrMattyPlays, for example. He has a 40-minute video of breaking down the game that he played with a review code. And I think it's great because he's actually expressing to the detail of why the game is struggling compared to the other Dragon Age games. And it's pretty compelling. Let me tell you, it is pretty compelling. And unfortunately, this has been happening a lot with other IPs. It's frustrating. Comparing the older games to what we get today, it's less features, it's worse story, worse acting, bloated budgets, and just money grabs. That's what it feels like. And I totally understand people just wanting to take the time to just play older stuff. Myself included. While I still enjoy Black Ops 6, basically I just want to play it with friends, right? If I'm playing it by myself, I don't really want to do that. I just want to take the time to have a good time, and that's got to be with friends if I'm playing current games. It's what I do with Lion, right? It's what we do even with Shadow of the Erd Tree and some other stuff, and that's probably most of us. But if we want to play good solo single-player games, we like playing the old stuff. Because the story is more inviting, there's the nostalgia factor there. Some features are actually in the game that we don't get today. We don't have to worry about microtransactions, DLCs. The game is complete and wholesome in its entirety, which is wonderful. And again, it's like, it's just, I'm right there with you. It sucks. And having another game like Dragon Age Veilguard, it's like, it just falls flat. And this is not about the woke stuff. For some people, that's in there too. Absolutely. We all have our opinions. I don't always like it all the time either. But again, we've had woke stuff for quite a long time, including with like the Mass Effect games. Okay, that's been there a long time. But I definitely think it's been ramped up a lot, that it has become the focus, and the story and the gameplay is built around that type of social class type of stuff. And it sucks because we don't need it shoved in our face all the time. And there's a way to do it without it being antagonizing. It's nice. And the older games did it. But the stuff today is just not the same, and we don't enjoy it. And I'm right there with you. It's a real bummer. So we'll see how Dragon Age Veilguard does with how big this game is. They've been working on it, too, for an extremely long time. They're going to have to sell millions of copies to actually break even. They had a pretty big marketing campaign. They also, again, development was somewhere between like 7 to 10 years. I mean, again, forever to actually make this game. And then it's a pretty big game, too. And just with gameplay and features and things that are done and built and all that. And yeah, it's they're going to need to make some serious money on this. But I already saw, even before it launched, it was already 10% off. I don't think that's boding very well for the game. And again, it's like, we want the games to be fun. We want the games to be immersive. We want the games to take some risk and go all out. And today, even with like Star Wars Outlaws, Skull and Bones, Suicide Squad, Concord, holy frick, man. Like, what are we getting this year in video games? Or even like Shattered Space. Look, taking time to review Shattered Space stuff, it's like, what the heck is this? $35 for 5 hours of campaign? That's ridiculous. That's expensive as F. That's crazy. And then too, we have creation stuff that's broken still, and people paid like $7-10, and that's exactly how I feel, just laying on the floor bleeding, with what some of these AAAs are doing. And I want these AAAs to succeed. I think we all do. I think that's why we complain about it. But man, I totally understand people wanting to play the old stuff. It sucks. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Inflection Games. So they made Nightingale. Maybe most of you probably don't even remember this being at the Summer Game Fest when they showed this, but Nightingale is severely downsizing. Again, we don't know how many people yet, but the game only came out on PC February 2024, earlier this year, on Steam and Epic Store, and it was an early release at that. It was looking that this was actually maybe going to be on console, and then nope, just PC. Not even a full release. Nope, just early access. It's like, ooh, there is some stuff going on there. The CEO, Flynn, said that it's been very challenging financially, but they're closing the UK office completely. It's not going to exist anymore. Sounds like a lot of layoffs, too, in Canada as they're going to restructure. And, boy, it's coming, baby. But, yeah, financially, they just can't keep the studio as it is, and they hope to turn things around. And this is where I can see small studios benefiting from Game Pass, like Inflection Games, because Xbox actually pays them up front to put the game on the service. They don't pay Xbox to get on Game Pass. Xbox pays them for their game to be on Game Pass. And I think we're going to see that more often with maybe, indie A or even AA games or studios saying, hey, can we get the game on Game Pass to get some money up front? Because then they can relax a little bit, they can breathe a little bit, they can actually get some cash infused right away for some of the work that they've done. And if the game does well, they stay longer on Game Pass and they get paid more. If they stay on there a really long time and they're third party, they get paid a bunch. I'm sure Pal World is making a ton of money. Because Pal World's also going to get a release for PlayStation, apparently, once they're done fighting Nintendo, maybe. But yeah, I mean, Pocket Pair was getting basically $500,000 from Xbox every month when they launched so that they could just run their servers. So Xbox is willing to help out the smaller game studios, and I think that is going to show. And I think people are going to take them on that. Which, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't they? With how the gaming industry is now, with how many studios are failing and layoffs and all of this mess and canceled game, boy, the amount of canceled games we've had just in the last 3 years is like over 150 games by the time you shove it all together. It's pretty insane. And they're games we're probably never going to see. We're also gotten a lot of remasters too. So if I was a smaller studio, I'd be like, hey, can we get this game on Game Pass? Because again, just getting that initial paycheck to start, we got some breathing room, we got some money to work with, and we can continue to improve the game, make it better, add content to the game, or maybe even start on the next project. That is kind of a nicer, more smoother, less risky way to go. And I think that's what Xbox Game Pass is ultimately offering from a publisher standpoint, is like, hey, you can be on our service and we'll pay you for it. I mean, it'd be like someone saying, hey, show up to this building, put in some work, and you get paid. You know what I mean? I mean, if you guys have never ran any type of a business or actually done anything, that's honestly the easiest way to go. So I hope Inflection Games doesn't disappear, because, again, there's some pretty big guys there that started Inflection Games, and they are independent. Okay, they're not... I don't think they're owned by anybody else. And Nightingale did look like a very interesting game with kind of a cool art style and stuff. But, man, it kind of looks like South of Midnight a little bit. I'll say that. But again, Nightingale, it may not even get a full release if they can't turn stuff around. And that's, oh, man, that's really problematic. That is really problematic. All right, let's move on. Another example of why AAA keeps trying live service and microtransactions. This is disgusting. Ubisoft shared in an earnings call that Siege has almost made $4 billion since launch. They launched in 2015. The only IP doing better in total revenue is Assassin's Creed, which started in 2007, along with several remasters and cosmetics and DLCs, and that is pretty insane. They're like 4.3, 4.2 billion for Assassin's Creed. But yeah, they've had 8 additional games, or more actually. They've had way more than that. They've had remasters, season passes, all of this stuff. And Assassin's Creed is barely just keeping ahead of them. And Siege is one game with microtransactions with new content like every 6 weeks. And Siege is still also, I guess, doing actually pretty good, according to them. It's lagging a few hundred million behind Assassin's Creed, but it's beaten all of the other IPs that Ubisoft has, including like Far Cry, Watch Dogs, The Division. Like, holy smokes. Like, that really is kind of insane because, again, some of these IPs, they've been around for a long time. And so, yeah, this is why AAA publishers, they're hungry for money. And this is why they do live service and microtransactions. It's just another example of why the live service model with the big companies, it's not going away. I feel like, too, this is why Sony, when they had Ryan as CEO, thank goodness he's gone, why they took time to go all in on live service. It's why Destiny was so successful. Fortnite, Apex Legends, PUBG also for a while, Counter-Strike Go. I mean, even Monopoly Go. Good God, $2 billion in 10 months? I mean, if you hit it good, you hit it good. But it also is getting more crowded. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these failures. And again, this live service thing, it's not really well thought out. It's not really thought of like, can this be successful? It's more like, if this can be successful, cha-ching! And that's what they're focusing on. And it's totally the wrong way to do it. Also, other Ubisoft news. Ubisoft has a new game. Thanks, Lion, for pointing this out. I did a little time to look, and I saw that Lucas Stevens actually had a video on this, this is pretty insane. Their new game, it's not good. It's called Champions Tactics Grimoria Chronicles. This is PC only. This is a blockchain game with NFTs costing upwards of $64,000. $64,000, folks. Okay? $64,000. That's most than probably what most of us make in a year. But you basically buy cards, or, you buy these statues, again, these NFTs, and then, the statuettes battle in the game. The trailer, we got to see this with Lucas Stevens' video yesterday. The trailer looks pretty ridiculous. The statues basically have turn-based combat, and this was also a very quiet launch. They really didn't promote this, so they know it's not going to do well, right? They know it's going to be horrible. This is also a free-to-play game. Though, quote, to start. So maybe you eventually have to pay. Maybe there's some kind of a 30-day trial thing. We don't know, because Lucas was actually trying to boot up the game on his PC during live stream, and it wouldn't boot. It just crashed every time he tried, which was just ridiculous. This also has an adult-only rating because of the gambling and the blockchain stuff. So at least we've finally gotten there with the ESRB. They're finally saying, look, we don't really, okay, this is not for kids. This is for adults only. Now, the difference between rated M 17 and rated A 18 is essentially that, well, M is still promoted and in stores, and A isn't. And so even though it's a 1-year difference, they got to draw the line somewhere. And the only other game I know of to actually ever get a rated A rating was San Andreas. No, was it Saints Row? Ooh, man, I'm having a hard time remembering. Maybe it was a Grand Theft Auto game. Oh, man, I can't remember now. I don't think it was San Andreas. I think I'm wrong about that. Leave it down in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. But, yeah, there was so much, like, adult stuff going on, full nudity in the game and whatever, that, yeah, it got an A rating. I can't remember what game that was, though. But usually companies, of course, shy away from this. Lucas Stevens in his video also said that Mirage had an A rating at one point when they were presenting the game, when they were showing the game off initially. But that quickly changed to M. And his theory is that, yeah, it had blockchain stuff in it, because Ubisoft still has Quartz. They first tried using that with Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which I think could have been an amazing game if they had to put more time into it and love into it, like they did with Wildlands, which is still one of my favorite Ubisoft games of all time. And that game came out in 2017, but it already feels worlds apart compared to what Ubisoft puts out today, or along with just pick another AAA studio. But yeah, that is kind of insane. So yeah, they're pushing this out. They know it's not going to do great. They know it's probably going to shut down pretty soon. But they're just getting it out there to see if it actually does anything, just to see. That's my guess. I mean, if you've already built it, why not just give it a shot? But Lucas did make a good point too. It's like, this does not help their reputation. All they've had is bad reputation lately, and it's getting pretty bad. I mean, with Star Wars Outlaws, with the whole debacle with Assassin's Creed Shadows, which that has just been ongoing for months, and delaying Shadows until February on Valentine's Day now. And yeah, Outlaws is going to sell millions less than what they counted on. They also had Skull and Bones this year. I mean, frick me, folks. Skull and Bones was such a mother-hubbing disaster. They spent basically an estimated $650 million. $650 million! Like, I can't even imagine 13 years of development, and then we get that. And Skull and Bones is such a flippin' joke. If people can enjoy it, hey, that's great. That's wonderful. We're not dissing on you. But compared to what they used to make with pirate games, compared to Skull and Bones now, like, what the frick? I mean, that is just not what we're expecting from a AAA studio. There is another good point. When this game closes, Champions Tactics Grimoria Chronicles, all of the stuff disappears, doesn't it? All the NFTs you bought, all the statuettes, just vaporware, right? Just gone. So please don't invest in this game. If you want to give it a shot, have at it. Okay, it's free to start. But yeah, please don't buy anything. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of funny. I am curious though too if they're actually using the Quartz system to run their blockchain, because that's basically what Quartz is supposed to be for Breakpoint. But they said they weren't using Quartz anymore, but they didn't say they got rid of it either. So maybe now they're trying it with this. I don't know. I thought it would have worked better as a mobile game instead of PC. Very mobile-ish, even the trailer and stuff. Very mobile game, right? But it's on PC only, so whatever. I don't know. I have no idea what they're doing. I don't think they do either. It's honestly horrible. Let's see. Lastly, we got to talk about Ubisoft again. And now this is honestly pretty disgusting. And this one kind of makes me a little upset. So let's get into this. Ubisoft tried paying off streamers and YouTubers for their Star Wars Outlaws previews. So people were flown out, right, to Ubisoft to try the game for 4 hours, and then Ubisoft took them on a VIP trip to Disneyland. I'm not even kidding. Not even kidding. There's even pictures to confirm this on social media, and I got to see a couple of them. I was like, what? Because these VIP tours, they're pretty expensive. And it's not like it was just one person. It was everybody. It was everybody they flew out to try the game for 4 hours. That's a lot of people. And so at $450 to $900 an hour for a VIP tour of Disneyland, you can imagine that actually gets pretty expensive. Flying everybody out, that gets pretty expensive too, depending on where they are in the world or in the country. And honestly, it's really hard to trust what Ubisoft is doing. Even just seeing with what they did with The other stuff with Star Wars Outlaws, omniracial. I mean, come on, what the frick is that? That's not even real. Or like with Assassin's Creed Shadows, literally making a statuette that is disrespectful to the entire Japanese culture. It'd be like, hey, here's your statuette of Assassin's Creed Shadows, a fictional game based on your history, and that's an example of Hiroshima, baby. I mean, it's like, are you serious? You're literally not even doing your research enough to present a an icon of the nuclear bomb going off and wiping people out, tens of thousands. Seriously? And now we're finding out that they actually paid for a VIP trip to Disneyland after they had their 4-hour session with the game. And now we're wondering, oh, well, that makes a little more sense of why they were like, yeah, this game's good. It's an 8, it's a 7, it's a 9, it's a 10 out of 10. I love this game. It's really hard to trust that now. And I gave it a 5. 5.5 out of 10. There's some things that the game does pretty well, but boy, it is marred by a ton of stuff. It sucks. It's a failed AAA game. AAA shouldn't be getting a 5 out of 10. That's an F, in my opinion. They shouldn't be shooting for that. They were probably shooting for higher, but good God, if it's a great game, they're trying to butter them up with a Disneyland trip, hundreds an hour for a tour, get to build a lightsaber, and oh my gosh. It's so scummy. It's so scummy. And it's really getting hard to trust any AAAs at this point. And I think a lot of us are actually there personally, where it's like, look, if it's got AAA on it, it's like, I don't flip and trust it. Seriously. Because a lot of these games are not meeting expectations. A lot of these games are not meeting the expectations of the previous games that they made. The DLCs don't match the story. The characters are different. The races are different. The dialogue sucks. The writing's garbage. There is no plot. You just totally left it out there in space. The remasters are trash. They don't run good. The best remaster I've played in a long time, is Assassin's Creed Rogue Remaster, which again is not perfect, but it's pretty good. But my favorite remasters to date, which this blows my mind, but to date, are Tomb Raider Remaster Collection. And we're getting another one in February next year. I'm stoked. I mean, I'm probably more excited for that game than just about anything else for next year. The only other game that I think I'm more excited for is Crimson Desert. But I mean, seriously, AAA is starting to become a bad word. It's having this negative association. And I think that's going to be my next state of gaming. So thanks for tuning in, folks. If you're new here, welcome. We do gaming news again once a week. The majority of the content you're going to see is, of course, playthroughs. I have a solo playthrough, and then I also that you guys get to vote on. You didn't get to vote on this one, but you'll get to vote on the next one, most likely. Though I really do want to do the Tomb Raider series. It's been so fun to do that. But anyway, we'll figure that out next year. And then also, I'm always doing a co-op with Lion. And then, yeah, we're going to try to give you reviews too, just like Black Ops 6, and basically any of the other bigger games that are coming out to Game Pass. So, and then of course, once a year, every January, you guys are going to be able to vote on what game off of Game Pass you would like me to buy and review for you. For this year, you guys voted for Star Wars Outlaws, and boy, there it is. Yeah, that one was painful. I'm going to be honest. That one was painful. But hopefully you guys can pick a better game. And next year, I will give you guys a small list for you guys to vote a few times over. And again, vote as many times as you want. But yeah, that'll be coming in January. And yeah, you can always like, sub, jazz, all that stuff. Gaming Garbage 22 at YouTube. Don't forget also Discord, Twitter X, and also on Twitch. if you want to see it on Twitch first, or chats every once in a while. I do look at the chat, but if I'm playing a game, I cannot multitask. I am a true man, and it is impossible for me to multitask, folks. So if stuff's happening on the screen, I'm not looking at my phone. It's just how it is. But hey, if you're patient, I will communicate. I will chat back. So, and for those of you that have, we have a great time. I think it's great. So with that, folks, hopefully you guys are doing well. We'll see you guys on the next one.